Let's begin today with a question about the most frustrating part of leadership. How many times have you tried desperately to motivate an underperforming employee only to watch them remain completely disengaged? You offered them the exact bonus that would motivate you. You gave them the exact type of public praise that would make you feel valued. You set up the exact working environment that you would thrive in. And yet, it didn't work. They still checked out. Why? Because you fell for the biggest, most destructive lie we are all taught in kindergarten. We're told, treat others the way you want to be treated. It sounds like a virtue. In some aspects, you can even think it's quite actually positive. But in the complex, messy reality of modern leadership, the golden rule can be a real disaster because your team members are not you. When you try to motivate someone using your own psychological triggers, you are not leading them. You are just talking to yourself in the mirror. Stay with me until the end because today we are going to learn how to speak the actual language of the people sitting across from you. Welcome to the H2H experiment. I am Joao and I am your host. If you are exhausted by traditional one-size-fits-all management advice and you're ready to do some deep cognitive surgery on how to truly connect with your people, you are in the exact right place. You know that the H2H experiment is not a normal leadership podcast. We really go deep into what makes us human at work. Today, I have a fantastic conversation for you with Joe Rockey. Joe is a consultant who specializes in building elite business cruises by doing something most managers never do, translating the specific psychological motivations of individual team members. In today's corporate world, less than a third of people are actually engaged at work. Less than a third. That is appalling. We try to fix this with clumsy incentive programs that often end up feeling less like rewards and more like bribes. Joe completely flips this script. He argues that trying to build a business by treating everyone like a herd, or worse, by only hiring people who act and think exactly like you, is a toxic relic of the 1950s management. In this incredible conversation, we are going to deconstruct why treat people the way you want to be treated is the fastest way to destroy your company's culture, a massive difference between a genuine reward and a corporate bribe, the ego-crushing reality that to succeed you must hire people who are better than you, and we will call out the absolute bullshit behind the most dangerous phrase in business. That's the way we have always done it. If you want to stop guessing what your team wants and start building an environment where people actually want to run through walls for each other, stick around. Let's dive into the experiment with Joe Rockey. Hello, Joe. Welcome to the H2H experiment. I'm super happy to have you here. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
No, it's really awesome to have you here. Look, Joe, I believe that we are going to have a very interesting conversation, very different from the other episodes that I have done in the H2H experiment, because we're going to talk about motivation, rewards, even to which point a reward can become a bribe to then you are buying people's time. So I think this could be a very interesting conversation for leaders that are looking for better ways to motivate their teams.
Absolutely. Like we all know that life's a game of incentives. And if you do them correctly, incentives work really, really well. If you do them wrong, it becomes a personal problem from everyone involved. And you don't recover from those very easily.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. You know, I work for a commercial team. I am leading a commercial team, and it's very hard sometimes to get people on board on trying to do their best all the time. Have you had an experience in which you had to help a leader or a team to go through that phase in which people just cannot find the energy to keep going?
Absolutely. I mean, it's basically the world problem that we solve and put into one sentence. Yeah, I mean, if you dive into what's really going on, is that every person has their own strengths and motivations that will make them want to wake up and run through a wall and be the full-on motivated employee that you want, super productive, everything that you want. The problem is that there's a long list, and most people are only fluent in their own top 5, their own natural strengths, their own natural weaknesses,
Mm-hmm.
which, not to discredit things you guys learned in kindergarten, but you were lied to when you were told the best thing you can do is to treat everyone the way that you want to be treated.
Huh.
Sentence is actually what causes a lot of the problems, because I know what I would naturally like, what my personality and my strengths are, so that's
Uh-huh.
how I treat you. But the reality is that they don't overlap. In fact, there's a very small likelihood that our top 5 are perfectly the same, let alone in the same amount we value each of them. So I care about things differently than you. Yes, we're both speaking the same language, but in terms of what's resonating and making me want to work and go all out and not have feelings like he's only pushing me so he can get his paycheck better, or they don't really care about me. Expressions like that occur when you're talking not in their love language, not in the way that their soul resonate. And to answer your question very succinctly, we figure out what resonates with each person's soul, and then we translate the mission into theirs so it connects with them. And they do want to go through fire because they're heard and connected with in the way that they've always wanted to be. It's really how you become the best boss they've ever had.
You know what you just said is actually very fascinating because I never heard this perspective before. This sentence that we hear since we were kids, actually, when you reflect about it, it doesn't make any sense, does it? You're absolutely right on that. Because if my personal values are family, work, and health, but your
Mhm.
personal values are financial stability, doing sport, or whatever, if I'm trying to provide to you what is important to me, then you will not be fulfilled. That's
100%.
brilliant.
You just nailed exactly the problem. Yes.
So, how do you help then leaders to identify which are the individual triggers or motivators for their team members?
Yeah, so we have a number of psychological tools we use. And that sounds way more clinical than it really is. But
Mm,
really, at the end of the day, it's basically doing a survey where
huh,
you're presented a statement, 2 options, and you figure out which one you're more in line with and by how much. You do that, and then we get the report back and we read it, and we figure out effectively what every person's edge of their puzzle piece is. So if you
mm-hmm,
think of a company as a giant jigsaw puzzle, there's going to be
mm-hmm,
some pieces that really naturally fit together, and some
huh,
that you look at and be like, that ain't ever going to work. And
okay,
that's what naturally will happen. What we do is not only do we look at the broader spectrum and say maybe this one doesn't connect with that one, but it can connect with that one way over the corner. So we look at the
huh,
total picture from a psychological level. Where are the strengths and weaknesses aligned? The other thing that we do is what are the conversation points or business activities that if you try to have someone do, you might as well just jump off a cliff because it ain't ever going to work?
mm-hmm,
Or is there something that you're going to bring up that's just going to cause an accelerant over the current emotion? So if you can
mm-hmm,
guide that correctly, pointing in the right way, it's like a Mario Kart speed burst. This topic is going to hit the speed burst regardless of what way the car is pointed. So knowing that in advance can really create a lot of benefits and everyone going in the right direction, especially when it's something that you can easily measure, like
huh,
how many sales calls are we going to have? How many widgets got produced? What was the feedback from our surveys? So anything that can be measured, you can apply an incentive program too. But it starts with connecting with them. And then for an incentive proper to be truly effective is based upon how far the reach goes. So
okay,
you can do one that just impacts the people in the room on a financial level. That's cool and
mm-hmm,
fine. But what's stronger is when it's tied to everyone's results. So it's not just me being a rock star and the rest of you all can stay at home while I'm at the All-Star game. But now I'm doing this for everyone. And then you take it even a step further to everyone's subsequent families. So now it's not just me taking the day off and phoning it in. And I don't care. My paycheck's fine, whatever. But no,
mm-hmm,
now I'm affecting that guy's daughter. Well,
Uh-huh.
now that's a
Uh-huh.
completely different set of motivations and gears that go into it. And when everything is already in line to the way you want to be heard anyway, bam, that message is powerful and things get done.
But that also requires, from my understanding, then correct me if I'm wrong, that the leaders have the awareness about the individuality that people have. That we as humans, we are individuals, completely different from
Mhm.
one another.
Yeah.
So how do you also overcome that wall that I see very often? Leaders just believing that they should treat their team as a herd, like everybody's the same. How does that work for you?
Well, as you can believe, it doesn't work. This is why we have things like Gallup saying less than a third of the people are engaged at work, which if you back that out, if you work a 40-hour work week, it means you're only productive effectively for 12 hours. That's what
Hmm.
Gallup is reporting, and they're pretty accurate on this stuff. So you're 100% right. It's because you treat everyone the same. There will be a couple of people who are naturally aligned with you, are like, yeah, I get it, I'm on board. Most people are going to be like, whatever, maybe I care. And then you're gonna have a
Hmm.
couple in the back that are flat out hostile to the message. So that's the reality. The simple fact is, most people will never do this work on their own of truly understanding someone else's personality type in the long run without outside help. It just won't, it's not natural. Like your personality is built the way that it is. It has natural strengths and natural weaknesses. Not to go all Darwinian on this, but the reason we have this as a species is to make us stronger as a species. There's people who are good at motivating, people who are good at thinking about a problem through. And we need all these different personality types, right? But you're ingrained to be yours. I mean, you've only lived inside your own body, your own mind, etc. So to
Hmm.
answer the question, you need to spend the time and the effort to either have an outside translator or figure out how to do it yourself. And that's the long and short of it. And that's why we provide the service of being a translator. We know most people aren't going to do it, and it's a giant need from human to human connections.
Okay, that's awesome. Most people treat silence like a vacuum that will suck the authority right out of a room. We fill it with ums and ahs and corporate buzzwords because we're terrified of the void. But silence is not empty. It's where your leadership actually lives. In my book, Shut Up and Feel, I break down the anti-technique for human-to-human communication. It's a guide for leaders who are done with the masks and ready for the truth. We explore why your vulnerability is your greatest competitive advantage and how to command any room, not by talking louder, but by being more present. The world doesn't need another polished presenter. It needs a human. Search for Shut Up and Feel on Amazon, or just click in the link in the description of this episode. I'm thinking about the reward itself. But before the reward, there is how you evaluate the performance. Do you also do that work with the leaders on how to make a better performance evaluation? Because we know that this old way of evaluating people, of evaluating their performance, is completely outdated, and it puts everybody in a competitive situation between them that they don't even want to help each other to get to an objective together. So do you also do this kind of work of improving the way that the leaders evaluate the performance of their team?
Absolutely. Yes. And I work with a lot of real estate offices, and most people can see this very clearly. When real estate agents get together, their competition isn't just people who work for a different real estate company. It's also the people
Mm-hmm.
within their own office, because they're all fighting for that same listing over on Grant Street, regardless of
Mm-hmm.
how it is. So when you have these dynamics where we only care about how many listings or how many closings you have through or something like that, it is very every person locking heads fighting to keep their own. And that's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the way that we do it is we still, I mean, don't get me wrong, the sales still is the end goal. Whether it be we focus more on the lead-ins through more listings or through more buying agreements, it still has to end up with revenue on the table. That part doesn't change.
Of course.
But where we alter it is how, as a company, you don't really care who's actually the one forcing the pen to be signed, actually at the closing table. You care that
Huh.
you as a unit are doing there. So if you have some people that are naturally equipped to do one part of the process than another, Rather than
Mm-hmm.
having two individuals trying to do the complete process themselves in silos, building stronger teams and putting them
Uh-huh.
together is what gives you better results. Obviously, you have to do your compensation model to accurately reflect that, but you get more as a team than you would as a bunch of individuals. And we know that's true in sports, but for some reason we don't bring it into our businesses and it just doesn't make sense. Like all the sports teams that you know are imploding, it's because they do special treatment toward just one player and the rest
Mm-hmm.
are out in the wind. But we do that every single day with our companies, letting our best salespeople do whatever. Or they can, we all, I mean, you guys are listening to this, you know this, that guy can get away with this and no one else will be able to. Well, that's a problem. That's a corporate problem starting 101.
Yeah, and that metaphor of the soccer team, I think it makes a lot of sense. It came to my mind, a soccer team, because you also recognize that in a team we have people with different skills that are more appropriate for specific positions.
Mhm.
Correct?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
as you said, in the company, not always is it like that. And what I have seen so many times about teams that fail is that the leader is trying to create copies of themselves or just selecting people that they know are not going to be a threat to them. So, and then we come to the whole part of the ego that needs to be destroyed for you to be able to really motivate people, right?
Absolutely. And what you're describing effectively was hiring in the 50s and 60s. Like that was the premise was you got good enough to make this company right. Now hire people that are only just like you. And it goes back to what I was saying in the beginning. You know psychologically what drives you and can make things work. So therefore I'm going to find people who are exactly like me. So therefore I can do that and drive them and make it work. Massive problem with that strategy is that over 80% of the workforce is not like you. So
Mm-hmm.
therefore, finding people like you, you're just shedding off quality talent left and right when you adopt that strategy, which in the 50s and the 60s was much more doable because flat out there was less employers, there was less competition. We live in a world now today where anyone as an individual can start their own business and start attacking you and take your market share. So there is an incentive to grab as many people as possible and work together and grow. That is not going away. I don't care how good AI gets. That fact will always remain true. And
Mm-hmm.
you also commented upon the other side of the coin, which is I don't want to have anyone who's stronger than me who might pose me out and be a threat. No, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
then you're the worst manager ever and you don't deserve a business. I mean, I'm just being blunt
Mm-hmm.
about that. If
Yeah,
you are afraid of having people better than you are designing yourself for failure. And
absolutely.
this point, probably more than other, is the root cause why I have fired clients. I fired
Mm.
7 clients in my life. 5 of them are because of this. And that's a fact of life. You can't try to build a business with people weaker than you. You should be actively trying to find better people than you constantly.
How did it happen? One of these cases in which you had to fire a customer, because that's something it requires a strong personality and a very clear intention and understanding of your own values and what you
Mhm.
want for your company. So being very, very brutal about it requires balls to do that.
It does, yeah. Yeah, I mean, because let's face it, they're your client, you know you're making revenue from them, and you're probably have a plan in the future of that continued revenue and whatever the case might be, fulfilling your duties that made them a client in the first place, right?
Hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, it absolutely is that. It's weighing all things in the mirror from a rational standpoint, not just from an emotional blip on the radar, but from a rational standpoint. This is not what I will stand for. This is not what's acceptable on a person to person level. And
Hmm.
because you're trying to force things that I know are going to create failure and problems, and you are not acting upon the advice to change them, and you are actively resisting, no.
Hmm.
And quite frankly, that's one of the very few reasons I endorse firing anyone. If they are being willfully resistant when they know the task, you know they can accomplish it, but they're being willfully defiant, that is unacceptable. And I do endorse firing in that situation. The rest of it, I tend to find is there's a disconnect in the communication and the desire. And if you
Hmm.
fix that, you fix the vast majority of the issues. But you can't make someone want.
I agree 100%. It's someone that's it's something that's inside out. You cannot just put it that in that person. Earlier in our conversation, you talked about that a team member starts caring about how the other team member, his colleague or her colleague, not achieving the targets is going to affect his daughter. So how does that work? How do you build that within Elite Business Cruise, which is your business, right? So
Yeah, so it's
how do
called
you get to
elite.
that point?
Yeah. So it's called Elite Business Cruises because the cruises are the ultimate incentive that everyone is working towards. So that's the last part of the equation. So yes, the win is everyone's going to go on a cruise, including your families. So how do we get that? We have to hit the team goal, selling cars off the lot, getting the X amount of listings, selling this many
Mm-hmm.
policies, whatever the case might be. We know what that goal is, and we know collectively as a sales force that's our responsibility to do that. So
Uh-huh.
what is going to give us the most likelihood chance of doing that? Is it everyone running out in a silo, or is it, hey, my strengths and your strengths line up to be better, we're going to help each other and do this as a joint operation? And then again, you just
Mm-hmm.
have to make sure that your actual compensation model can come through and do that, which at the end of the day sounds a whole lot harder than it is. The
Uh-huh.
number one objection I run into there is, but this is the way we always did it. And my
I
counterpoint
hate
is, and
that
that's
so
why you're
much.
not selling. Exactly. You're asking me to give you results you've never had before, but you're trying to make me do it the same way you always did it. How does that make sense?
I think that's probably the biggest bullshit I've ever heard in my life in the business world. And I keep hearing it so much more often than I would like to.
Yeah. There's one circumstance when that's the way we always did it makes sense. And that is if you are doing something that you have proven time in and time out that this is why it has to be that way, but it takes
Mm-hmm.
forever to explain. Like if you're an
Uh-huh.
electrical engineer, there's a certain reason you do it this way, because if not, you're going to die. But there's lots of technical math behind it. That's fine. Like, I don't want the
Mm-hmm.
building to fall on people. That's a structural engineer. Just do it that way. Fine. That's the way we always do it. It works. But if it's, well, this is how we always pay people. No, that's not an acceptable answer because that doesn't apply. That's not a law of gravity. And that's, I guess, pretty much the line. If it's a law of gravity of the natural law, we figure those out. You can copy those. Human relationships don't have laws like that. So trying to apply this
Mm-hmm.
kind of setting to human relationships doesn't work. And it all goes back to what we said in the beginning. Everyone has a different emotional state, a different personality. There is no such thing as a unifying law across us all. It just doesn't exist.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. If there's one thing that's an absolute true about human is that we are fluid.
Yes.
There are no fixed laws. Absolutely not. It depends on the day, depends on the hour, depends on the life, on the background, on so many things. The variables are infinite.
Yes,
Joe,
indeed.
so you know that we have here at the H2H experiment, we have the H2H experiment of the week, in which we always bring some kind of framework or protocol or even just a quick tip that leaders can take away from every episode so that they can apply immediately. Something that's very easy, very simple for them to apply, to use. What would you leave to our audience today?
Well, the first thing is the repeating of the misnomer you all were taught since kindergarten. Treating
Mm,
people the way you want to be treated is a way to destroy your company. If you take away just that and ponder it, you win. And
mm-hmm,
then, like I said, the things that we dove into depth about wanting to step outside your comfort zone to just try to recognize someone else's what's truly driving them. And just
uh-huh.
having that conversation about what's driving someone behind the scenes will teach you more than would ever know otherwise. And don't be afraid of the outside rules that are telling you don't do that, don't do that, don't do it. That's the way we always do it. When we don't talk about the person. What happens if we say something wrong? We're going to get canceled. You're going to be all over every video and tweet, and we're not bringing the company down like that. Don't live in those fears. Actually talk to your people about what's going on at home, because the fundamental reason is, yes, you are paying them, but the reason they are coming to work is because of their personal life. And no matter what your paycheck is, it will never be more important than that.
Brilliant, brilliant. So, in summary, what you're saying to the leaders is shut the fuck up and listen to your team. Something in that direction.
Yeah, even more so, start by asking.
Asking
Like,
questions,
take the
absolutely.
first step.
Curiosity, absolutely, absolutely. Joe, as we come to the end of this episode, would you like to leave a final message to our audience before we close?
Yeah, I mean, My message would be the invitation to come into my world and have some of these tools, at least become exposed to them. The way you do that is come to elitebusinesscruises.com. That's elitebusinesscruises.com.
Brilliant. We are going to leave the link in the description of the episode so that whoever wants to reach out to you, they can have access to the link. Joe, thank you so much. It's been a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. Being someone from the sales, it really connected to this conversation, and it really, you made me reflect on some things as well. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad I'm able to do that. And thank you for having me on the H2H experiment.
All right, brilliant. See you next time. Bye.